America is a white Christian nationalist project. That is how we were founded. White supremacy is part of our source code as a nation. This country gets its understanding of race, of whiteness, of blackness. It is the basis of our economy. It is everywhere. But the mainstream media only had to start paying attention to it once it started attacking the Capitol, once it hijacked the courts, once it's getting books banned in their nice public libraries.
Megan Goodwin is a senior editor at Religion Dispatches. She is the author of Abusing Religion, Literary Persecution, Sex Scandals, and American Minority Religions, and with Ilyse Morgenstein, co-author of the book, Religion is Not Done With You. Today, Megan, who grew up in Yardley where she attended St. John the Evangelist Grade School and later graduated from Archbishop Egan High School, joins The Signal to talk about her scholarly and journalistic work covering religion and why this is a topic each of you should care about, whether you are religious or not. Hi, Megan. Welcome to The Signal.
Hi, Cyril. Thanks for having me.
So a few weeks ago, we corresponded when I was asking for permission to republish a recent article from Fred Clarkson. The New Apostolic Reformation vows to stage the largest ever gathering of Christian women, which you published at Religion Dispatches, where you're a senior editor. And during our exchange, you mentioned that you grew up in Yardley. Now,
Sure did.
It's not every day I randomly run into a fellow Bucks County outside of Bucks. So first off, can you just tell listeners a little bit about your experience growing up in Yardley?
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure. So we moved from Havertown in Upper Darby to what was, my parents told me we moved to the country. Like, there were no houses. I'm dating myself here because if you know what Yardley and Morrisville look like now, obviously it's nothing but houses. But like, it was farmland. There was a bull that ran across our backyard at one point. And we backed up onto a bunch of woods. So yeah, it felt really, really rural compared to what I had known up until the time I was 7. I went to St. John the Evangelist Catholic School from 2nd to 8th grade, and then went to, it used to be Bishop Conwell, and then it was Conwell Egan, and I think they've closed at this point. But that was also a little bit of a culture shock because I went from being in the class with 20 of the same people that I had known mostly since I was 7 to a school that was definitely closer to the city, definitely more working class. This is more the autism than anything else, but didn't realize that not everybody felt super warmly about Yardley or Mooresville or any of that. So when I was in Spanish class, my first year of high school, and I said, soy de Yardley, there were a lot of like stink looks that I fully did not understand until many years later. Flash forward to my senior year of high school when I started dating a drummer who lived in Croydon, and my dad freaked out for, again, reasons that did not make sense to me until many, many years later. So it's, like it's a nice white Philly suburb. That was like where we moved when my dad made it. And I think my parents are still trying to figure out where the fuck I came from, but I felt like a freak the entire time I lived there. It was my politics were wrong insofar as I even realized that I had politics, but I did derail a religion class in junior year because the teacher, this poor guy, So junior year at that time was Catholic theology. They were trying to walk you through like the rules of the church. And we got to the day where they wanted to explain that homosexuality is wrong. And at this point, I know like half of a gay person, and I'm not aware that I'm queer myself. But again, with the autism, somebody really should have had me tested for something. I was like, this doesn't make sense. How am I supposed to believe in a loving God who created everyone in their image, but you're telling me just the being of gay is wrong? And the teacher was trying to walk me through it and trying to give me examples. And I have latched onto this as only a self-righteous 17-year-old autistic woman can. And I finally got him to admit that this actually wasn't even his personal belief. And upon retrospect, I was possible he was great too. Again, not so much with the reading of the social cues, but once he admitted that was not his personal belief, but rather the teachings of the church, I just lost my entire shit. How dare you? Like, the level of self-righteousness is, again, I was 17, but this was me. I derailed the entire class. It was like a 45-minute session, and I I couldn't make it make sense. And that, I think that is the overwhelming description of me growing up in Bucks County. I could not make it make sense. None of this. Because, like, I grew up on Sesame Street. I grew up on Mr. Rogers and reading Rainbow. Let's all get along. Everyone is beautiful in their own way. I'm not getting how that maps on to how we're all treating each other. And that's a thing I struggle with to this day. So, yeah.
Now, today, religion plays a huge role in your professional life.
Sure does.
Besides being a senior editor at Religion Dispatches, you're the author of the 2020 book, Abusing Religion, Literary Persecutions, Sex Scandals, and American Minority Religions.
Yep.
And more recently, with co-author
Ilyse Morgenstein Fuerst. I'm going to just get out ahead of it. Yeah.
Ilyse Morgenstein, who you also co-hosted a podcast with.
Morgenstein Fuerst. But yes, we did.
Keeping It 101, a Killjoy's Introduction to Religion podcast. You and Ilyse Fuerst co-wrote...
Morgenstein Fuerst.
Yes. You co-wrote the November 2024 book, which just came out paperback, Religion is Not Done With You, or The Hidden Power of Religion on Race, Maps, Bodies, and Law. So we talked about this just a few minutes ago, but why religion? Was it because of was your family really religious in addition to going to Catholic school? What is it in your past that made you follow this path?
Okay. A of all, it sounds like you're in league with my therapist, and you're not wrong. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you take an autistic child and put her in an incredibly religious family and then put her in 13 years of Catholic school, she's going to take it literally, and she's going to have some questions. So yeah, my entire family growing up was Catholic. A huge chunk of Bucks County is Catholic. I did not really know non-Catholics until I got to college, and I went to college in Boston, so there were still plenty of Catholics around.
I imagine.
Yeah. So you can also imagine that North Carolina was a bit of a shock to my system. We can get there. But so if we're talking about, like, why am I like this? I am like this because so much cultural cradle Catholicism, like just absolutely inescapable. This is the only way that you can see the world. But also my mom's side of the family I try not to diagnose people because that is not my training. I'm not that kind of doctor. But in an armchair sort of way, there is a pretty wide swath of religious mania on that side of my mom's family. She found Jesus like every 3 or 4 years, different one every time. My Aunt Lane was a Sister of Mercy, like walked herself down when she graduated high school in Philly and signed a pledge and did that her entire life. My aunt and my uncle on my mom's side both converted to Baptist churches, one American, one Southern. And then I had a fundy aunt, the youngest one, who just kind of free range, apocalyptic, just Christianity. And here's the thing. Catholicism is a totalitizing worldview. There's no space without it. And because I'm like 6, I'm 8, I'm 12, I don't know that there are different kinds of Christianity. I just know that there's Catholicism. So when my aunt and like my uncles are presenting all of this material, I'm like, oh, this is all part of it. Which meant that like when I found pamphlets which meant that when I found pamphlets in my aunt's bathroom about Satan being alive and well on planet Earth, I would then take them back to my confirmation class and be like, "Un minuten bitte, I feel like we have not spoken about this. How I am not getting all of the information, and how dare you?" I had a similar reaction to, honestly, if I was going to find one route to winding up in religious studies, it was having read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe way too many times. And the line about the witch being descended of Adam's first wife was like, the fuck? I've read this text 1,000,000 times. What first wife? What aren't you telling me? Again, so neurospicy. And then like finding out about, okay, Midrash exists and maybe we're not actually taking the Bible literally, but depends on which parts we're talking about. And there was a bunch of stuff that didn't add up, and I just never got over it. Really, like there's a reason that the book is called Religion is Not Done With You, and the you might as well be me, Megan Prince Goodwin. I have always taken this stuff really seriously, and I should state uncategorically I am no longer Catholic. But at the same time, growing up Philly Irish Catholic has shaped my entire experience of being in the world. And like, frankly, Catholicism is shaping just about everybody's experience in the whole world, has been for several centuries now, if not millennia. And if we're talking about the contemporary United States, it's directly shaping your Supreme Court. Yeah, I just never got over it. And I also got incredibly frustrated with the fact that I would have questions and the response was like, no, 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 no. I think I think about this a lot, actually. I think if I had been born Jewish, I probably would have stuck with it, because the entire point is asking questions and wrestling with the divine and wrestling with how we can be good and ethical with each other. Catholics shut up and do what they're told. And if there were ever a religious tradition that were less suited to how my brain works, I haven't found it yet. But it's been interesting making an entire career of asking questions about religion without being traditionally religious. It has led to some really jarring experiences in my personal life. My dad died a couple summers ago. And again, my entire family is Catholic. I was the one that was asking about last rites when we were in the hospital. Woof. When we brought him home and his wife started praying the rosary with him and then just kind of lost it, as you would imagine, they were crazy about each other. I was the one that was doing the rosary with my dying dad in fucking Latin because Bishop Conwell made me take Latin. Like, the experience of doing myself a heckin' religious trauma while I'm trying to comfort my dying father is, I think, one of the most poignant examples I have of, wow, this is just really not done with me. Like, I can get outside it, I can be critical of it, but there's no me without this thing. And what I've tried to do for at least the last 10 years of my career is try to help folks understand that you don't actually have to have personal religious convictions in order to realize that religion is important and to see the way that religion is shaping the world around us. That's my entire gig.
So, as religion wrapped its arms around you and carried you from Yardley to Boston, did you go to university there specifically to pursue religious studies?
No, I was out so hard. I was like, the reason I went to Boston University is because they offered me the most money. And I only applied to massively huge schools because I had been in educational systems my entire life where frickin' everybody knew me. And I wanted to see if I could not blend in, but just like not be so very conspicuous. The answer, kind of, but it turns out I'm just conspicuous and weird. There's a lot of hand flapping. I'm hard to miss. So, yeah, Boston University made the most sense because it was far enough away that I felt like I could get some space from my family and from the people I had known my entire life. It was a real city. Also, Boston has this rep of being like a scholastic, academic, intellectual, like, holy land. Like, it has more bookstores per like square foot than any other place in the country. And that felt correct. So, and it did for a really long time until I realized I hate snow, and now I live in North Carolina. So, but no, I was a journalism major, which is funny because that is definitely still a thing too. Yeah, I have a BS in print journalism, and I thought I was going to be done with religion. I was done asking questions, and then I got to my senior year and realized, no, I am not. And in case you were curious about just the level of nerdery that we're talking about here, by my senior year, I had a bunch of classes that I had to take. I maxed out my credits. So I sat in on 7 religious studies classes for no credit because I was just really curious. I just really wanted to learn some stuff. So like, I took a class about African diasporic religions with, it turned out, one of the preeminent scholars of African diasporic religions in the entire world. I sat in on a conversation about the problem of evil. I took a Taoism class. It was fascinating. And by the time I got through with college, I realized, no, this is a thing I'm going to be wondering about for the rest of my life. So here we are.
So, one thing you had just mentioned and that you stress in your work is the importance of people caring about, or maybe at least being informed about, religion, even if you're not religious.
Yes.
Can you unpack that a little more and explain why?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that Americans tend to think about religion is that it's personal, it's private, we don't talk about it in public. It's actually really impolite, like bordering on violent, to try to talk to people about religion, because we assume religion works in very Christian ways and is a private, none of your business thing. So first of all, that's just wrong. That's not how religion works outside Christianity. And frankly, it's not how it even works within Christianity. If we're talking about poor communities, communities of color, rural communities, religion shapes so much more than just like, are you or are you not going to church on Sundays? But over and above that, you could be raised 100% atheist. You could be that imaginary person that, like, again, I live in the South now. So there's a lot of conversation about like, people just need to know about Jesus so that they can accept him into their hearts as their personal Lord and Savior. I don't have a dog in that fight. That's a lie. I have an anti-dog in that fight. But I challenge you truly to find one single person currently residing in the United States who's not at least heard about Jesus. The problem is not that people don't know. The problem is that they don't think it has anything to do with them. Or frankly, as a queer person, as a disabled person, I assume that Jesus is not on my side, and not Jesus specifically, but Christianity, because I'm just going to gesture in the vague direction of the White House. Here's the thing. The way that we make our laws, the way that we provide healthcare, the way that we tell time, all of these are implicitly tied to religion, and not just religion, but frankly, Christianity, frankly, white Christianity, and in this moment, specifically white Christian nationalism. So what Ilyse and I really try to stress in the show and in the book is that allowing yourself to step out of or push aside conversations about religion lets the people whose religion is winning keep winning. If we don't talk about religion, if we don't know about religion, it's hard to spot, it's hard to understand. Frankly, not that this current administration makes any sense anyway, but you can't even understand their motivations if you don't know where they're getting this. I spend a lot of time yelling online because the unsignified signifier is not done with me. But there's so much bafflement on the left about where this is coming from. And, oh, this is hypocritical, like Jesus is love, but you have these nominally Christian people in office saying, like, yes, it is actually okay to shoot that priest in the head with a rubber bullet. And a thing that I'm trying to help folks understand, and there's so many other people working on this too. If nothing else, shout out to Kristen Dumais and Jesus and John Wayne, because that has done a lot of really good work. Those are not inconsistent. They think they are in the midst of a spiritual war. This is spiritual warfare, and yes, you actually should shoot woke priests in the head with rubber bullets. If you don't understand the opposition, then you cannot fight the opposition. And this country has been consistently and deliberately discouraged from thinking critically about religion. So what I'm doing, what Ilyse and I are doing, what so many of my colleagues are doing is just trying to give folks the tools to understand what's going on and hopefully make some productive responses. So at the very, very least, a country that prides itself on religious freedom and individual liberty can actually live into that promise and make space for people to be different from one another.
You had mentioned Christian nationalism.
Always.
The Christian nationalist movement and the broader Christian right, they've been amassing power and building infrastructure for decades.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
sorry, ask the question.
Yet I feel like the I guess you'd call it the mainstream media is just kind of like, I feel like they've just been catching up to this story maybe the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
That's not to say there haven't been other journalists or independent journalists doing the work, but in the mainstream, they're just catching on now. Why is that? Why did they miss this huge story about this movement that is capturing power?
Yeah. Okay. Couple things. Before I answer the question, I want to zoom out, because when I'm talking about white Christian nationalism, I'm not just talking about like your Pete Hegseths and your Donald Trump kind of, but like, it's not just the explicit stuff. It's not just the Proud Boys. It's not just the Klan. America is a white Christian nationalist project. That is how we were founded. It is, as NPR journalist Gene Denby would say, white supremacy is part of our source code as a nation. Ilyse and I in the book amplify that to say it's specifically white Christian nationalism. This is, frankly, even where this country gets its understanding of race, of whiteness, of blackness. It is the basis of our economy. It is everywhere. It is the water that we swim in. But the mainstream media only had to start paying attention to it once it started attacking the Capitol, once it hijacked the courts, once it's getting books banned in their nice public libraries, right? So yeah, it's, as somebody who taught race, religion, and politics in 2015, the landscape is so markedly different now that I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. When I was teaching religion and politics at Bates in 2015, we had so many conversations about all of the mainstream media coverage saying, where is the religious left? The religious left has always been here. In fact, the religious left is why you have most of your rights. Like, there is no civil rights movement without the religious left. There is no suffrage without the religious left. The problem is the religious left is overwhelmingly Black people, brown people, women, disabled people, socialists, folks that we don't associate with our public understanding of Christianity. This is the other thing. You know who else is on the religious left? Jews, Muslims, Native people. All of them have been doing decades, centuries of agitation rooted in religious conviction, but we don't think about that as religious because it doesn't look like the white mainstream Christianity that we're trained to recognize as legitimately religious. And it's not just us, our courts do that too. So going from A, religion isn't even an issue anymore, which was so much of the coverage of 2015. And then B, oh, the religious left doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, cool. Tell that to Cesar Chavez. I'm sure he would be really happy to hear that. Like, tell that to the Young Lords. Cool. And then to see the overt white Christian nationalism that emerged under the first Trump administration, I think really shook a lot of these nice, overwhelmingly white mainstream media folks to their very core, because they had been laughing this off and dismissing it as ridiculous for decades. I mean, one of the most jarring experiences I've had recently is I went back for another friend's podcast and rewatched Jesus Camp. And this is a film I've seen a bunch of times. I used to use it in class. Yeah. Here's the thing. When it came out, it was like, oh God, we're doomed. This is an apocalyptic scenario. Yes, it is so fucking mild compared to what's happening right now. And also, there is no what's happening right now without the building, the long-term procedural dedication of what's now the political right and what's now the United States. Like, this has its roots in 1965 with civil rights. This has its roots in 1973 with Roe and abortion. Frankly, 1965 Griswold versus Connecticut, when we had access to birth control. All of that has been building since that time. They're playing a really long game. And frankly, at this point, they're kicking our asses. And in large part, I think it's because there is a failure on the left to prioritize community. On the white left, I should say. There's a failure on the white left to prioritize community, to prioritize learning from folks who have been doing this work for decades, and frankly, to prioritize affect, emotion, what drives people. Because a lot of the arguments on the left, specifically the white left, are you should be doing this. It's very scoldy. It's very shamey. This is, I just want to clarify because it's been a weird week on the internet. When I am talking about shame, I am talking about wanting to shut down participation in like a No Kings March because it doesn't really do anything. And I agree, it is performative, but it is a step toward engagement. It helps people be brave in public. It is a baby step. It's not where my activism lies, but I'm not going to shit on it. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about that specifically, and not the, hey, being mad about a Nazi tattoo is purity testing. No, a Nazi tattoo is a fucking Nazi tattoo. And if we don't draw the line at Nazis, what the fuck are we even doing? We might as well be the ADL at this point. So
you're talking about the...
Oh, yes. I used to live in Maine, so this is Plattner and his, yes. Oh, I didn't know I had a totenkopf on my chest. Oh, and I just got it covered up with a Fenrir. Like, it's fine now. Like, this dude is either very dumb or very committed to pretending like he's not a white supremacist. And it has been disheartening for me as someone who works on religion, and specifically religious intolerance, as someone who used to live in Maine. I was there for 10 years, to see that he's doing better in the polls since the Nazi tattoo shit came out. And like, Maine is one of the whitest states in the country. But also, they did rally to kick out an attempted Nazi settlement not that long ago. I wanted to think better of them. And yet, sorry, I have gotten off track because of the yelling and the Nazis. But yes, short version, I think the mainstream media has been a product of American culture, and American culture historically has really encouraged us to not think about, value religion in public. And now you have a bunch of folks scrambling who assume that religion is simple, assume that, frankly, religion is Christianity, and white Christianity specifically. And the extra challenge there is because Christianity is such the way that Americans do it, the way that white Americans do it specifically, is such an individually focused thing based on your personal relationship with Jesus. I personally think it makes everybody feel like they're an expert on religion based on what their feelings about religion are. They don't treat it, and this is not, by the way, just the American public. This is within the academy. The assumption is that religion isn't really worth studying because, like, it's a bunch of your personal feelings, and, like, don't even sweat it. And are we really taking this seriously? Like, I had a Duke historian tell me that she straight up thought religion was an epiphenomenon. Like, it's a thing that happens because of other stuff rather than a driving factor or something that has informed all the other categories that we use to understand the world. Yeah, it's not just journalists is the thing that I want to think about. But I do think that you're right that we need smarter, better religion coverage fucking 20 years ago. And if not 20 years ago, today.
So, we've established that they're finally covering it, right? But
Yes,
are they doing it correctly or effectively? And should they be platforming to a national audience figures like Doug Wilson, or is that a mistake?
I mean, there are some folks that are doing smart coverage. They are, in my experience, in the minority, not because journalists are dumb, but because Americans aren't smart about religion because they have been encouraged by systems to be really dumb about religion so that they will leave it alone. So I'm thinking of, like, folks like Melissa Grant actually did a fantastic coverage of what's been going on. There was some QAnon stuff. I learned from her that actually there's really interesting overlap between QAnon and, like, Mormon mommy bloggers. That's not a thing I would have thought to look for. But the Operation Underground Railroad, the, like, panic around child trafficking and child sex trafficking specifically, which is, sex trafficking is far rarer than labor trafficking. Not that any trafficking is okay, but, like, it created a problem. And then there were people actually kidnapping children to traffic them because of this, like, created need. So Melissa Grant's work really helped me understand that. Like, Jack Jenkins is doing some interesting stuff in RNS. I have that's Religion News Service. I have so very many notes about what's happening at Religion News Service. They have I don't want to call it a pay-to-play policy, but they do platform a lot of Hindu nationalists, and that gives me pause. There are folks out there that are qualified to do. You know who's great? Jeff Charlotte. Jeff Charlotte.
He's been a guest on the show.
Perfect. He is a lovely human. Jeff and I have done at least one panel together. Our approaches are very different because I think systemically, and Jeff is, I think, of all of the journalists I've ever interacted with, so deeply invested in individual people's stories and how, quote unquote, normal Americans get to the point where they're pushing for a slow civil war. That kind of coverage, I think, is invaluable and, frankly, changes more hearts and minds than the shit that I do. People hate thinking about systems. People don't want to think big. People don't want to look at 50 to 75 to 150 years of history and feel like, oh, we've got so much work to do. But if you can show them the humanity of folks who are failing to recognize your humanity, I think it can be the beginning of a conversation. I am not willing or, frankly, capable of doing that work, but I do really value it when other folks are doing it.
And it's nice to see people like him kind of get invited on programs like on, PBS NewsHour, or, getting a more of a mainstream audience as well, whether it's cable news, etc. And just for readers or listeners, excuse me, Melissa Grant, she's a reporter with the New Republic.
New Republic, yeah, but she's been out in the game well before New Republic. And again, it is so very, very rare for mainstream journalists to take religion seriously, to actually be getting into these communities and thinking about, like, what motivates them. So anytime somebody's diving in like that, I really appreciate it. In terms of Doug Wilson, I don't think America needs another theologian. And I think there's some real confusion between religious studies as a discipline and theology as a calling and, frankly, a colonizing worldview. Like, because when we're talking about theology, we're almost always exclusively talking about Christian theology in public. Like, we're not talking about a, like, Rabbi Ruttenberg progressive Judaism situation, although we should be because she's phenomenal. Her I want platformed. Doug Wilson, here's my thing. None of these people say anything surprising. They show up and say exactly what you think they're going to say. And then I think it gives people one more excuse to not take religion seriously, because that doesn't represent how they're seeing the world. It's not curious about the world. It's not inviting people to ask questions. It's giving you answers that, frankly, you didn't even ask for. And I don't think that that is important. At least it's not important to me. But I do think there is something that we as a country, we as communities really need to wrestle with in the how do we take Christianity seriously as both a colonizing force and a force for liberation in this country, without dismissing the real harm that Christian systems have done and are continuing to do literally every day, right on my face. So one of the loudest pushbacks I've gotten on Blue Sky is, I forget even who I was responding to. It was a decently small account, but this is a thing that you see a lot, is like, this person, Hegseth, or like Trump, whoever, they're not real Christians. And from an inside theological confessional perspective, that might or might not be true. That's not what I'm doing here. What I am saying, and what got me yelled at, was, as a scholar of religion, these people are absolutely part of what Christianity is and does in the world. And you don't get to say that's not us. Because when you say that's not us, what I am hearing as a non-Christian, what my Jewish friends, my Muslim friends, my Sikh friends are hearing is, that's not my problem. They're not me. So that's not Christianity. And like, confessionally, theologically, that might be true. In terms of structures, in terms of laws, in terms of privileges in this country, you are closer to them than I am. These are the people that will listen to you who will not listen to me. People will listen to Kristen Dumais, and by people here I specifically mean white Christians, will listen to Kristen Dumais because she speaks that language, because she's embedded in that community in a way that they would never let me even in the door. And if they did, they wouldn't be listening, because there's no reason to take me seriously. Like, sure, I have a PhD, whatever, but like, A, of all, I'm Catholic, so what am I even doing there? I'm not Catholic. But like, you never get it off. I think what I want to say here is, thinking about proximity to power makes a lot of people who are feeling really powerless right now frustrated and angry, because they don't know what to do. And sadly, I'm an academic, so I don't, I just diagnose the problem. I'm not really great at solutions. But I do think one step is, okay, no, you can't topple the Supreme Court. No, you can't disrupt things at the highest level, but you can disrupt things at the Thanksgiving dinner table. You can say, hey, that's not my experience, or I don't know, have you thought about it this way, or here's what we're missing. How could we be pushing back on our communities? Where are these assumptions about people who are different than we are coming from? And who wins when we invest in these scripts of like, immigrants are taking our jobs, or trans people are invading our bathrooms? Who does that benefit? That's really the piece that I feel like falls out of these conversations, is not just what's happening, but like, why. That's actually my next book, is thinking about who benefits from treating specific religious communities as cults, right? It's a big business. So that's why the book's called Cults Incorporated.
Yeah, and people shouldn't feel powerless. I mean, you can kind of fight back locally, against this movement to capture the so-called seven mountains, and one of those mountains is like education. And we've seen the Christian nationalists and right-wing Christians try to and successfully infiltrate school boards here in Bucks County, and even like institutions like the PA Family Institute and their legal arm, the Independence Law Center, are being brought into school districts, sometimes secretly, like in Central Bucks School District, to rewrite, book and bathroom policies.
Yeah.
So, we have elections coming up in November, and one of those elections are school boards. So one thing you can do is educate yourself about your school board candidate.
Absolutely.
And make sure that you're voting for someone who actually believes in, secular public education.
I will say, so I had a conversation with Jillian Schmidt, who's at UVA, and who was really integral to getting the Robert E. Lee statue pulled down in Charlottesville. And one of that interview should be coming out hopefully today. But one of the things that I found really striking about that conversation is how much of her work is paperwork, is procedure, is research. So yeah, when they got the Lee statue pulled down and they finally got to take control of it, they had that shit melted down within 3 days. But they were able to do that because they had done years of research finding out who could take the statue. What does it take to transport the statue? How big a truck do you need? Do you need like special signs on the truck to get it on the highway? All of this teeny tiny minutia stuff is where the work actually is. So it's not just finding out about your school board. It's like, is there an open seat on your school board? Probably. Nobody wants to do that shit. Is there an open like seat on your local library board? Probably. Nobody wants to do that shit. It's boring and it's frustrating. And that is why they keep winning, because they do the boring, frustrating bullshit jobs that everybody else just assumed weren't necessarily anymore, because like, it's cool. We fixed racism. We fixed homophobia. Everybody's chill now. It's cool and groovy. Toy Story 3, Black Man in the White House, don't even worry about it. And then we're shocked to find out in 2016 that a lot of America had different opinions about it. So, but it's also things like I am really, really hesitant to put faith in elections, A, at all, B, alone. Elections absolutely change things, but they are nowhere near enough. So the places that I see the most encouraging work being done in my personal community are my neighbors trying to make sure that everybody has enough food to eat right now, particularly since SNAP benefits are expiring on November 1st, right? So local community fridges, donating to a local food bank, all of these things are part of a larger political project where we're taking care of each other because nobody is coming to save us.
No, absolutely. I mean, and voting is important, but what's
Yes,
more important is what you're doing those other 363 days.
100%. Although,
So,
can I share my favorite voting fact in like sneaky Christianity?
of course,
We vote on a Tuesday. Do you know why?
I do not.
Jesus, you're welcome. We vote on Tuesdays because the assumption is folks who are voting would have to travel to the polls, right? Can't travel on a Sunday because of God. So you need a day to get to the polls, which is Monday. So we vote on Tuesdays. So like, it's there. It's inescapable.
This little piece of trivia.
You're welcome.
Are there any stories that listeners should kind of be aware of that might be flying under their radar?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, so many. So first, I'm going to encourage folks to pay attention to what's going on Religion Dispatches because I think we're doing some really interesting and important work. Yeah, I think people are getting better at paying attention to white Christian nationalist politics when it is extremely explicit and extremely in our faces. But they miss the nuances of how else religion gets used in our world, potential points of intervention or things that they might think are none of their business, but actually should care a lot about. So I'm thinking of things like, the Supreme Court allowed yet another execution last night. And thinking about, A, of all, the death penalty is ridiculous, and I can't believe we call ourselves a civilized country for so many reasons. But this is a really good one. But this moment makes me think of an execution that I wrote about for Religion News Service ages ago, where the man who was to be executed was a Muslim and had requested an imam be present for his last moments. The Supreme Court said he wasn't entitled to one because the state of Georgia requires a formal relationship with a religious leader for that religious leader to be in the room during an execution. The state of Georgia only has formal relationships with Christian ministers. The end. So that man died without the spiritual comfort that he was arguably constitutionally entitled to because the state of Georgia just doesn't care about Muslims. They just don't. Unless they're trying to get rid of them or stop women from driving, which is a whole different conversation. I also mentioned the Hindu nationalism piece. So Hindu nationalism on its face sounds like it has nothing to do with the United States. Hey, do you use a computer? Congratulations. You should be caring about Hindu nationalism because you know who's in the tech sector? Overwhelmingly, thousands and thousands of South Asians, many of whom have ties to South Asia directly and India specifically. So the fact that Hindu nationalism, which is a Hindu supremacist way of seeing the world, has overtaken India sounds, again, like it has nothing to do with us, but has very real ramifications for what working conditions are like in the tech sector, specifically, but not exclusively in California. It is also weirdly and sometimes literally holding hands with Christian nationalism. Trump loved Hindu is a thing that he says. He held hands with Modi, the prime minister, thinking that this piece of the world has nothing to do with the US is so short-sighted, and again is a very implicitly Christian way of thinking about what religion is or where it's working. I'm in the middle of this piece about the Lumbee, which is a native community in North Carolina, who is trying to do an end run around normal procedure to get federally recognized. And that doesn't sound like a religion story, and it doesn't sound like anything that non-native people need to care about, but it is a place where we're seeing the rights of all native people endangered. We're also seeing a degradation of federal process that has been in place for decades that's being driven by a Christian nationalist White House. So, I mean, Trump on his third day in office said he was going to get the Lumbee recognized, and they're working on it. It's weird enough that Trump kept a promise, but why does he care about the Lumbee? They vote for him. And Robeson County went overwhelmingly for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 24. Or well, Yeah, 2020 to 24. So what I'm hoping that all of my work does is just help folks find inroads to why they need to know and care about folks that are not immediately familiar to them.
So, besides subscribing to religiondispatches.org,
Mm-hmm.
how else can people follow your work?
Oh, well, I'm on Blue Sky all of the time, which is not healthy at all. And I mean, I have a website. It's megan-goodwin.com. The other half of my work honestly it's not based on my research, I think is how I want to say that. So I do web and design and communications consulting for grant-funded public humanities projects. So a lot of my work is actually making other people's research look cool. So I'd love to direct folks to work like the Crossroads Project that's coming out of Princeton, which specifically funds art and community building and research around Black religious histories, communities, and cultures. We still have all 5 seasons. That's actually 7 seasons and some extras of the podcast up online and will for the continuing future. So it's Keeping It 101. And the website is keepingit101.com. It is a Killjoy's introduction to religion. You don't have to start from the beginning. The first season is basically like a Relly 101 class. All of the kind of theoretical framing of what's religion, who's religious. My project is always who gets left out of religion. So I think this second episode that we did talks about the Satanic Temple and the way that they push back, trying to keep America holding its word about commitments to like disestablishment, the government not picking a side when it comes to religion. The World Religions season got an award. We got a Wilbur Award. That was pretty cool. Yeah, thanks. Mr. Rogers also got a Wilbur Award. It's, Oprah got one. It's fine. Like they're like 18 rungs ahead of what we got, but still same award basically. So the podcast I think is a really good way to get into that. I do a lot of writing on religion dispatches as well. But really, if you're looking for what is going on in my brain on a day-to-day basis, Blue Sky is it. So I am at MPG PhD on there.
Great. We'll link to that in the show notes. And do you still have family in Bucks? Do you ever come back?
I do, but I don't talk to them.
Oh.
My dad's funeral went really poorly. And I drove away from his house after the funeral. I was like, well, I don't have to see any of those people ever again. And I haven't. But yeah, they're still there. They're your problem now.
Well, if you ever come back to town to visit, you'll have to let us know. When we can have a speaking event. But Megan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on The Signal. I really appreciate you and the work that you're doing at Religion Dispatches and elsewhere. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This has been The Signal, a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Cyril Migaleko, editor-in-chief and host. For more progressive news, analysis, and opinion from Bucks County and beyond, go to www.buckscountybeacon.com.